Hello, boys and girls. Sorry about the lack of an unboxing today. A few things came, but not enough that's really worth making a video on, so I'll save it for when I got more things to talk about. But it's one of those things where I'm tired, but I'm not, tired enough to not want to make a video, so I thought I would talk a little bit about my philosophy with collecting, like how I go about it, and some of the things I do as far as organizing on the shelf and all that kind of stuff. Because, within all of the unboxings that we've done and all the unboxings we'll continue to do, that as we see the collection get bigger and bigger, I just thought I would let you in a little bit on my process. Because everybody's got their own process. I think every collector out there has a different process. Everyone will tell you something different. Um, so maybe you can relate to this, maybe you do something different, but hopefully you'll be able to learn something. But let me just take a little sip from the drink of unboxing champions, even though we're going to save the few things that came today for another time. Alright, so first up, as the most obvious thing, well here, I'll just give you a little taste of something. So the first and most obvious thing that you'll notice, at least with me, because I keep repeating it over and over again, because it keeps being true, which is that I am a slipcover psychopath. And why is that? Well, here's something that came in the mail like maybe a day or two ago, but it's the Canadian slipcover of Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. And this particular kind of slipcover design I think is cooler than any of the ones I've ever seen in America. But what I think, and I'm sure a lot of people out there would agree with me, that when something, even if it's like a relatively inexpensive film, when it has a slipcover to it that it comes with, at least in its first pressing, then at least to me, it makes it seem like it's more important and more like it just gives you that extra something. And, like now, when it comes to this film, when I've seen it used at whatever used media store that I've frequented in the past, I've never seen it with a slipcover of any kind, so that's another thing that I thought made that particular thing special. Now, the movie itself is coming in the mail. I just managed to find that particular slipcover for not much money, so I thought, hey, why not grab it up? Um, Now, here's a common thing that I think you might run into, which is, let's say that you have, here's a good example, the Evil Dead series. I'm gonna show you here. So, I'm just grabbing stuff at random here, but anyway, so I'm talking specifically about alphabetical order relative to series chronology. Like, how do you do it? So, this is just the way I do it. Everybody else has a different way of doing things. I like to put the series of a particular film, I like to try and put it in either the chronological order of when the films were made, or if it's like Star Wars or something, then I have put that in its own internal chronology, with the exception of the copies of the original versions of the original trilogy that I have, where I kind of put those off on their own because they came before the special editions, and also because the original versions of the original trilogy, they are so marvelously self-contained that they almost kind of belong off on their own. The special editions, they do more to bridge continuity between the rest of the series and the older films. And again, some of the changes I'm okay with, some of them I'm not, but I'm just glad to have the original versions preserved. But yeah, for that one, I have them in their own internal series chronology. But as we saw, sometimes the internal series chronology and the order in which they were made, oftentimes they'll match up like that. But then you run into the problem is, okay, you got Evil Dead 2, and then Army of Darkness. On where do you put that, under A, or do you put it, in the third in the Evil Dead series? Well, I put it there because, well, that would look kind of weird otherwise, at least to me. And, it just kind of looks nice having the trilogy there. But then you factor in, like, the remake here. Now, this, as we've seen before, we have the theatrical cut, the Canadian edition, and the extended cut, which this is like the, Scandinavian countries, Norway, Denmark, Sweden. This is that version of the extended cut. It's region free, but still. So here I put theatrical and then extended after that. And then another thing, where do you put Ash versus Evil Dead? I put it last in the Evil Dead series, even though it too starts under A. And I have no problem with mixing TV shows with films. Some people, they will separate out their shows from their movies. Some people will separate out their, steel books and their special edition packaging from the rest of their collection. I don't do that. The only thing that I do, just because if I didn't do this, and the sizing would be all messed up and the collection wouldn't really function the way that it should, the only thing I do is I separate out Blu-rays from just DVDs, because the cases are different sizes, and I've tried to do it in other ways, and whenever I do, the height differences are too wonky, and the spacing is off, and it doesn't work. So by separating out the DVDs, which I deliberately don't have many of, it just helps everything to not only look more uniform, but it also just helps everything to function the way that it should. Which brings me to my next point, which is what do you do about space? Because the more that you collect, space becomes an issue. Now, these two shelves behind me, you'll notice they're two different colors. I've been meaning to paint them. The other shelves that I have are black. I've been meaning to paint them, but I haven't gotten the chance to, and I will be moving out of my present location into a new place in a few months. So when that happens, I will have to take everything off the shelves, but before I put them back on, I'll paint these both black, just so that there's some consistency. But in terms of room, now these here are two bookshelves that I got off of Facebook Marketplace for really cheap. And because they're made for books, there's, let's take a look. So, if you look behind me, which you can't really see all that well, but look at that, there's a lot of space in the back there. So, if I got really desperate for space, I could always, do double stacking and things like that, except I don't want to do that because then I couldn't see everything. And I mean, to me, the whole point of these kinds of things is you want to be able to pull it out like you would a book on a bookshelf. It's the same kind of thing. So in this case, it's something where, yeah, I could if I wanted to do that, but I don't think that would really work. If it became an emergency, then sure, I could do that, but I'd rather not have to. The other shelves are a little bit better suited for being media shelves specifically, but not just spacing, using the space of whatever shelf you have, but also, what do you do as far as, the spacing, making sure that there's enough space with the movies themselves. Now, as you can see behind me there, I had to double stack, horizontally across. I had to stack those two rows on top of each other, there and there and there. And that's because, well, there was a lot of empty space that could be utilized, number one. But also, number two, it's just one of those things where it kind of makes up for the lack of there being shelves that are more evenly spaced for DVDs or for Blu-rays, because those are technically bookshelves, and so they have to be a little wider to accommodate bigger books. So in this case, it just utilizes the space more effectively, but then you have to ask, well, are you going to be, like James Rolfe and leave some extra space like at the end of shelves like that? Are you going to do that so that way when you get something new, there's extra space to put it in? Or are you going to do what I do? And, I make sure that the space is utilized fully. And if I get something new, yeah, I inevitably have to move everything over. But honestly, that doesn't bother me, because I actually kind of enjoy that part of the process. I find it kind of therapeutic, because it makes me feel good to just see everything being in its right place. And, I don't know, it makes you feel like you're at one with the treasures that you've spent so long collecting. But, everybody's got a different thing. Like, I know that James Rolfe, in his Blu-ray and DVD collections, that he gets really mad at himself if he runs out of room and he has to move over every DVD. Now, he has a lot more than I do, although I have a lot more Blu-rays than he does. He has a lot of DVDs and even more VHS tapes. But at any rate, I like to try to make things maximize the available space as best as I can, and to not really leave stones unturned if I can help it. And then comes the question of, the actual movies themselves. So we've already talked about slipcovers. Could talk about steel books here. Which we already looked at, Army of Darkness. Now, some people will put steel books in special packaging off in its own section. I don't do that. I like to just try to be as chronological as possible and as alphabetical as possible. But, with steelbooks, yeah, I like steelbooks. I think that they can be, they can be equally durable, but also kind of fragile in other ways. So, it's kind of, it just depends on really what you're looking for. Now, this design, I think, this could be quite possibly the best steelbook design of all time. Like, I haven't really seen one that is better than it. But, that's just me. But anyway, it's something that I think steelbooks, they have a prestige to them, they have a durability to them, they have just making something special. But as we saw in that first Birds of Prey unboxing, when they ship broken, then it's not like a Blu-ray, a normal case, where if Ferris Bueller's Day Off arrived broken, like the case, I could easily swap out the case and that's that, because these things are cheap, so it is, assuming that things aren't broken and they aren't fragile like that, then, they're all right. And if you take care of them like I do, then you'll most likely be all right. But again, some people, they aren't careful with it, and they can get broken, or they get ship broken, or whatever. And then you have the differences between, like, let's say, first, I'm just picking all these off the shelf at random, so there's no rhyme or reason to this, but, so you've got a normal Blu-ray case like that, at least in North America. That's what a normal Blu-ray case looks like. And then you've got something like an Arrow film. Now, this is a Region A Arrow release, a fish called Wanda, but Arrow, as we know, it is from the UK in its origins, and they tend to like these bigger cases, these thicker cases, by default. And it makes sense for Arrow because, well, it is UK in its origin, but it also it is a prestige line of movies, and so therefore it makes sense for it to be rather unique in the same way as something like the Criterion Collection, Where these kinds of cases, they're the only ones that I know of that use these kinds of cases, and therefore makes them really, really special. And Criterion films, they always tend to go above and beyond with not just the presentation, but the special features, just the overall prestigiousness of the films that they preserve. But at any rate, it's like the types of cases that you find, you can either separate them out into their own sections just based on the type of case, based on the luxury line that they come from. Like, you put all your Criterions together, all your Scream Factories together, whatever. Which, again, I don't do that. I could do that, but then, I just think that would create more problems than it's really worth, because this is another section of collecting, and another facet of it is the overall organizational system. What do? Do you organize things alphabetically? Do you organize them by genre? What do you do? And I used to, when I first was collecting, I originally did it just like this, where I alphabetized everything and didn't bother with genres. But for quite a while, I did separate things out into genres, because I was having a hard time, like, finding something specific, like, that matched my mood or whatever. But then that created another problem, which is, okay, you separate them out into genres, but how much do you subdivide them? Do you do, like, an overall horror genre, or do you split it up into, like, slashers, zombies, werewolves, vampires, found footage, what do you do? And then drama, it's like romantic drama, sports drama, you can subdivide a genre all day long. And then you think about, like, those different subgenres of exploitation, blaxploitation, sexploitation, then you get really obscure, like Bruceploitation, all the different, Bruce Lee imitation movies and stuff, or you're like, and then you're like, well, do I have enough movies in my collection to really justify it having its own subsection? Does this belong here, or does it belong there? Like, I would agonize over that. I would really agonize over it, and I would constantly rearrange the entire collection because I would change something up. And it was a lot of work, and I think it was a sign of me feeling like I didn't have control over my certain aspects of my life in general, and so I was like, well, I have to have control over something. I'm going to try and control this, but it ended up, for me, it ended up being more trouble than it was worth. So in this case, I don't even bother with that anymore, and I just go back to organizing everything by alphabetizing everything, with the exception of, like, keeping series together and things like that. I find that it makes my life a whole lot easier, because I just don't have to expend so much mental energy towards something that really shouldn't have to require it. But again, everybody's different. There are some people who I'm sure are very religious with their genre subdivisions and everything, and maybe they do have enough Bruceploitation films to justify there being a Bruceploitation section. And it just, and I think the problem for me with doing that was that it made certain genres look kind of pathetic because of how relatively small they were compared to others. And it's like, well, I don't, it makes it look like I don't like, the anime section was never that big, and it's like, well, it makes me look like I don't like anime or don't value it enough to have it be sufficiently robust, versus other genres. And it's like, well, that makes me feel bad. It's like, I don't want, anime to feel left out relative to, like, horror or superheroes or sci-fi or anything like that. So it can compound your anxieties, or your, particularities, or your pernicketyness, shall we say. But yeah, it's one of those things where, if you go down that rabbit hole too much, I think it's hard to get back out, so I just try to keep it relatively simple. Now, another aspect of collecting is all the different editions of films that you can find. And if you have a region-free player, like I do, then you open yourself up to finding movies that are from other regions. Like this, these are Region B's. These are UK Arrow releases, not released in the US. Now, the Dr. Phibes movies have been released in the US, but they've been on those Scream Factory Vincent Price box sets that are really expensive because they're out of print. One of them is coming back into print, and I pre-ordered it, the first one. Um, but, you know, once you have a region-free player, which I would highly recommend everybody go out and get one, preferably one that also plays 4K discs. If you do that, then you open up the possibilities to having all kinds of special editions of movies that you may not otherwise have found. Um, I always try to find the best version of something, like the most prestigious, the most. It's like, because I figure if I'm gonna get it, I might as well go top tier and not, go halfway with it. I'm kind of a go big or go home kind of person. But not everybody's like that. Some people are okay with, that this is I'm different from people that are like this, but like for me, not only do I want to find the best version of something, but I also want to find it in the best format. I'm not somebody that I'll buy a new movie on DVD if it comes, if it comes out on Blu-ray and, comes out preferably on 4K. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go straight for the 4K because, well, why would I do anything less? I've got a 4K TV. I have a 4K Blu-ray player. I've got the necessary HDMI cables. It's like I want to watch that thing in its proper quality. I don't really understand people that are just kind of willy-nilly about their formats. And, I mean, there are a lot of people who I guess are not really the quality snob that I am, but for me, it's like if I'm going to get it at all, I want to get the best possible format for it. And I'm also not someone that I like to have multiple versions of things. I tend to just like to have to get it, preferably get it one time and that's it, with the exception of if I am upgrading to a better format or a better edition. That I will do. But, as we looked at before with the Exorcist films here, I had the anthology, but then I sold it to get the 3-disc edition of the first one and the Scream Factory of the second one. I already had the Scream Factory of the third one, and then, I got these custom covers printed off for the latter two, and that way I didn't have to double dip, and that way, well, they're all individually packaged, they're all easy to get on and off the shelf, and also they're in their best possible versions that I know of, so I that makes me feel good. It makes me feel like, oh, I should have, gotten a different version of it or something. And like, Father's Day, for example, this is the limited edition, 4-disc one. And it is limited edition. You can see there's only 5,000 made. And, so that also gives you an extra layer of prestige, but it also, it makes you feel like, okay, I didn't leave the stone unturned. And, because I used to have just like the normal release of that, but it's nowhere near as cool, It just makes you feel good. Or at least it makes me feel good. Now, there are some exceptions where, like, there will be a, like, Best Buy exclusive steelbook of something and I didn't find out about it until long after it had gone out of print, and it's like, well, I can't do anything about that unless I were to try and dig up, a copy of it on eBay, and even then it would have to be something that I really liked, Or sometimes, like, what we looked at with Joker, which I'm not, that one, I think that slipcover design is actually better looking than the Best Buy steelbook design. But, that's not always the case. I do think it's really nice whenever you can find an exclusive version of something that you can't find either at another store or trying to find something that fits that description. Um, oh yeah. Sometimes you find a version of things that you can't find at another store, or in the case of like Escape from Tomorrow here, this film was released on Blu-ray like exclusively with Best Buy, and I got this like the day that it came out, and I got it with the slipcover with the sticker there, um, and this was out for on Blu-ray for a limited time, and then the only like readily available versions after that were the DVD, and I made sure to run out and get this as soon as I could because I wasn't sure if Disney was gonna like halt the sales of this film. Like I know that they attempted to go after the filmmakers in court, but then they had a really really good fair use lawyer on their hands, and they got it to where they were able to argue that it was a parody or satire, and Disney eventually realized, if we continue to go after these guys, it'll only give them more attention. So they did get away with having shot in the Disney parks and using their copyrighted characters and things like that. But I still, it's like they could have easily changed their minds or something else could have happened. So I was like, I gotta snag this up quickly. But like, see that's an exclusive title there, which they don't do those that often, but they mostly do just exclusive editions of big movies. And then, then you look to other countries, like this is that Canadian 4K collection of all the Men in Black films that we looked at before. And this is Region A, so if you don't have a Region Free player, you can still look for these versions of things that are a little bit more off the beaten path relative to what other people have. Which, that brings me to my next point, which is the necessity, I think, of having like movies or editions of movies or whatever that are different from what you might see in everyone else's collections, especially like if you watch a lot of collection videos on YouTube, that will really stick out to you. So like, here's a movie that most people probably won't have in their collection. There's going to be enough that do, because this wasn't exactly, you could find this at a Walmart or a Target or whatever. This is the Canadian version of it, and you can tell because of that slipcover design and the fact that the French is there. But, I think it's important to not only have more uncommon films in your collection, things that people may not necessarily have, but, something that makes your collection stand out, or like, this is UK exclusive. You can't find that in the US. And, why is that important? Well, if you, want to stand out, if you want to have your collection be taken, I think, more seriously relative to those of others, then I think that is important, and it also just broadens your horizons. If there's one major pet peeve of mine, and I have a lot of them, but if there's a major pet peeve of mine, one of them is that I really can't stand it when I watch a lot of collection videos on YouTube, and it's the same standard editions of the same mainstream movies over and over and over again. It's like people don't really care to be different. They don't care to like broaden their horizons, or just shake it up by like having a Canadian version of something, a UK version, a German version, of Australian version, whatever. I'm just more so like disappointed whenever I see that. And it's like, you would hope people would have a little bit more originality than that, or they would want to have a collection that didn't look the same as everybody else. But then again, I guess people are more okay with conforming to certain things. I'm not. I like to stand out, and I like to have things that are different. And eventually, once I do a complete Blu-ray collection video, which, would you guys like to see that? Because, this is only like part of it. I was planning on doing one maybe after I got moved into the new place a few months from now. Because I do want to paint these shelves, so that could be something to look forward to. But once we do get there, then you'll kind of see what I mean, and you can already see it a little bit, with what you have been able to see thus far. But it's something that I think it's important, and I kind of take pride in that. Um, but it's just I think that that's something that a lot of people don't really think about, and I think they should, because it helps you to just shows your own personality a bit. And I think while we're on that topic, it's important to have films in your collection that people wouldn't necessarily expect of you. Like things that show that you have a wide range, things that show that you like old movies and new movies and movies across different genres, or like something like way out of the realm of possibility, like something like Dear John here next to David Cronenberg's Dead Ringers, and it's like, do most people have those two next to each other? Probably not. But I think that says something about you, that that you want to experience all different kinds of things. It's not just all superhero movies. It's not just all horror. Even though I love both of those things, it's like there's more to life than just that. Um, and sometimes you're just not in the mood for certain things. You want to experience something different, or at least I do. Can't say the same for everybody, but and then some people are like, well, why collect it all? Why not just do streaming? Well, I did make a separate video all about why you should collect instead of just relying on streaming, because they can take down any title, they can, there's quality issues, internet connection issues, things like that. Um, and especially like if we're talking about like a Gone with the Wind situation, yeah, they could just yank something off of streaming just for whatever reason, unexpectedly. And if you don't have a physical copy to fall back on, then it's like, well, tough shit, you're not watching it. And so it's like I think that alone is a good reason to, have a good physical media library, because I just don't trust streaming any further than I can throw it, in terms of like having titles that I want to watch when I want to watch them in decent quality and without censorship. Because like even if a movie is on a streaming service like say Disney Plus, now we have to worry about them editing scenes out or altering scenes, and they thankfully do tell you that they've done that, but still it's like, why bother? Why put it on there if you're just going to edit things out or change things? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But at any rate, those are some of the things that go into my collecting. Now, in terms of the actual collecting process itself, I'll say this. Part of why the whole same editions of the same mainstream movies over and over again, part of why that gets on my nerves is because, well, A, it's all the same, and B, it tells me that the people that are like that they probably bought all their movies new from either a Walmart or a Best Buy, and they just never really cared to, exchange them or to do whatever. I don't do that. Like, there are movies that I will get in brand new if it's something like Escape from Tomorrow, where I wanted to snag this first day because I didn't know if I would get another chance, and I'm glad I did, because not only was it a Best Buy exclusive, but then I got it with the slipcover, which I'm sure is really rare now. And it's something that I think it was definitely worth paying day one prices for it. But for the most part, I will try to get things used as much as I possibly can from Amazon or eBay. Especially eBay these days has actually been proving to be quite advantageous for me. I had some bad eBay experiences when it came to video games, and that's part of what kind of turned me off from eBay for quite a long time. But then with eBay and me having found really good sellers that I like to buy from, it allowed me to, well, build the collection back up faster, but also to do it in an economical way. Um, Example, the not the slipcover, but the actual film, which is on its way. The actual film cost like $4, and that was in conjunction with a whole bunch of other stuff that was similarly low priced that I also got my shipping refunded to me. So it's like, if you are going to play the physical media game, I think that is the way to do it, because, well, you can amass a big collection without having to break the bank, and it's just because if I had to buy all this stuff new when it came out, then yeah, that would have been astronomically expensive and probably impossible, because a lot of this stuff, would have been out of wide circulation relatively quickly. So that's something that I think is a great way to build up a good collection without having to spend a lot or as much as you would. Some people haven't had as good experiences with used movies, but I really have. I haven't had no significant problems really come to my mind right now. And if they do, like in some of the unboxings, like it's been the wrong edition, or it hasn't come with the slipcover when they said that it did, things like that. In that case, then yeah, I'll send them back. But in terms of things not working, or the usual things people are afraid of when they buy used things, I haven't had that problem. Things seem to they seem to do fine. But I think it's something that's more my philosophy, is I try to not only find things used, but I will always try to look for sales. I'll always try to look for combo deals, like at some local used media stores around here, like Second and Charles, or like Manifest Discs. You will find buy two used, get one for $1, things like that. I always try to take advantage of those whenever I can, and same with like some of the eBay sellers that I mentioned. They will do like buy one get one at 15% off, or buy two get one free, or buy in bulk and you get your shipping refunded to you, things like that. And so if you are really good with hunting for a good deal, then again, you can get certain things for much less than you otherwise would. Because again, if you just bought all this stuff brand new without being a price hound, then that just wouldn't be feasible long term. And I'm trying to think what else. I do think that certain global stores, like Zavvi, they can have some really cool exclusive things. Those can be kind of pricier because of the exchange rate between U.S. dollars and British pound sterling. It's the exchange rate's not as favorable to Americans as, say, Canadian dollars as opposed to U.S. dollars. Because of you can get Canadian stuff for cheaper, you can get Australian stuff for cheaper, New Zealand stuff for cheaper, but not stuff from the UK. That tends to be pricier. So if you do get something from the UK, make sure that it's something that you can't otherwise get. Like this edition of Network, I couldn't otherwise get in the US, and so I was glad to do that. And I got this one off of Arrow's website directly, which that also brings up another point, is like when to get things off of Amazon or eBay versus when to order them from a specific, especially if it's a boutique label, when to order it from that company's website. Well, I lucked out with this film and a couple other films like it. So this is Night Beast from Vinegar Syndrome, and I did find this on eBay, but I managed to find it with the slipcover, which I ordered Spookies, another Vinegar Syndrome one. I ordered that from Amazon. It did not come with a slipcover, and I had to order it separately when I managed to find it on eBay. But if I were to have ordered this from Vinegar Syndrome's own website, I have a feeling that the probability of it having come with the slipcover would have been much higher. Um, and especially if we're talking about Arrow. Like Arrow, they put out those really pricey special editions that usually come with a ton of discs that they don't later release on the standard versions, and they go out of print really fast. So that's another example of like a good time to order from their website directly. The Criterion Collection, they will often do, not often, they'll do flash sales on their website, through Barnes and Noble, through Amazon. They'll do those, and those can be good ways to get Criterions. And Shout Factory, they'll do their own series of sales and pre-order specials and things like that. If you pre-order certain titles or do it through them, you get like an exclusive poster or action figure or some other collectible. So yeah, just keeping in mind those more mainstream stores with their exclusives versus the manufacturer's website, and the kinds of exclusives they offer and how much those mean to you relative to price. That's other factors. And then when to let go of certain things. For me, it comes from, well, am I ever going to watch this again? Would I rather exchange this for credit so I can find something different? Is there a better version of this coming out so I can, sell that for cash or for credit, depending on where I'm at, trying to do it at. And, so that's always something to factor in there. Usually when there's like a 4K of something that I already have on Blu-ray, or if there's a Blu-ray of something that's only on DVD or whatever, I'll usually go ahead and sell the old one and just wait for the new one to come out. Because it's like, well, what good is it doing just sitting there right now? Or if it's something like I have the digibook Man of Steel, that does not normally come with the 4K, but I bought the 4K disc separately, and so I have this nice lenticular digibook, but the 4K disc is in there too. So it's, you can sometimes mix and match like that. Which brings up another question. How much customization do you want to do? Because, they're your movies, and no one's telling you what to do or what not to do with them. You can do what you want. And so then you ask yourself, okay, do I want to do like a custom cover for something? Like here's a good case in point, Spartacus. You saw it in the collection. I went ahead and I sold the normal Blu-ray of this because the 4K is coming out, and I pre-ordered it. Now the question is, well, what do I do with the custom cover? Do I use it or do I sell it? There's all kinds of variables there, and same with like this awesome custom Joker cover. I really like this, but I'm also glad to have the 4K's slipcover. And also this is, I guess, technically for just the normal Blu-ray because it doesn't have the 4K symbol on the spine. So that always stuck out to me too, kind of mismatch. But, this is a cool cover, so what do I do with that? Do I sell it, or what do I do? There's all kinds of variables there. I say, mix and match however you want. Don't let people's weirdness or their judgments or whatever hold you back from customizing things exactly the way you want. If you want to have a different colored case, because they do sell different colored Blu-ray cases on Amazon, like red ones, green ones, purple ones, black ones, any number of things. If you want to do that, then go for it. Nobody's stopping you. And even like, all kinds of cases, they'll come in like clear, they'll come in black if it's a 4K, sometimes they'll come in a red case. It's like there's so many different ways to do it that, that's another way to make something special for you and for your collection if you want it. And then, some people, they don't care about autographed movies, and some people do. I like it whenever I can afford it, and whenever the opportunity presents itself. I've tried to get a lot of the autographs that I've had. I've tried to get in person as much as I can. Sometimes I've gotten them off of eBay, and I've always looked at other things that were signed by these people to try and see if I can tell a forgery or not. And oftentimes, like on eBay, you'll see like the seller's picture next to the person who signed, and then you compare it to other things that look like that, and it's like, yeah, that seems like it's a sincere thing. Or they'll have the certificate of authenticity, and that's the best thing. Ideally, that's what you want. But sometimes it doesn't always happen that way, so you kind of have to take an educated guess. It's not something I want to make a habit out of, but I have done it a few times. Um, but yeah, on the whole, I want to have stuff that they sign for me in my presence, if at all possible. Um, and then yeah, I think just overall with collecting, just try to, as best as you can and as much as you want to. For me, anyway, I would say as much as you can, as much as you want to, make your collection really reflect who you are. What your taste is, your whatever it is. If you're really OCD, if you don't care, your collection, I believe, says a lot about you. Um, the kinds of movies that you have, how they're displayed, how they're organized, what their condition is, all that kind of stuff. I think it really goes into your overall psychological makeup, and it reflects your overall psychological makeup. And for me, I think I've gotten it down to the best possible version of it that I've ever had, and I'm not in so much turmoil as I was when I was trying to organize everything by genre and subdividing like crazy, and that was just too much. But it's something that take pride in it. Make it a reflection of you and what you care about, what you believe in, and don't let other people's judgments about oh, you should only collect horror movies, or they look down on you if you have like children's movies, or you have movies that are controversial or are unpopular, or they're whatever they may think, because inevitably you'll get a lot of people throwing judgments at you. Don't let them do that. Collect what you want to collect for your own reasons, and don't let anybody stop you. If you want to get custom covers, if you want to make custom slips or steel books or whatever you want to do, go for it. Just have fun with it is really what I'm saying. And also just don't be afraid to be different. Don't be afraid to look outside the USA for different copies of things, different editions of things. You know, the collecting world is kind of your oyster. So, just go for it, embrace it. It's a fun hobby. It is a way to really express yourself while you are amassing a collection of things that should hopefully provide you some happiness and meaning and value, which they do for me because, as a filmmaker, it's like, well, you got to have an extensive collection of films so you can be inspired and continue to educate yourself about the film medium. But yeah, so that's just my little piece about my philosophy when it comes to Blu-ray collecting. What about you? What's your philosophy when it comes to collecting? Let me know in the comments. Please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and set phasers to stun, warp factor 5. I will see you in the next video, and hopefully we'll have some more stuff to look at. I'm going to finish my drink of Unboxing Champions and hopefully sleep, because I'm pretty tired, but I had more energy than I thought I would. So yeah, sleep tight, and I'll see you soon.